Silly season has officially been started when Sebastian Vettel announced his retirement last week at the Hungary Grand Prix. While everyone in the paddock was talking what young driver was going to replace Vettel, Alonso and Lawrence Stroll were already signing the paperwork. Not even 4 days after Vettel retired, Aston Martin announced Alonso as its new star driver for next season, leaving a place open at Alpine. Seeing Alonso go was a great shock to Alpine, especially after they had to hear the news through Aston Martin's public announcement. Nonetheless, Alpine has access to a great talented driver through their junior program and expected Piastri to take Alonso's seat at Alpine next year. But Formula One wouldn't have a silly season if it wasn't for the unexpected turns that sometimes happen in the sport. A day after Alonso announced his switch to Aston Martin, rumors spread that Piastri is not going to Alpine next season, but that a deal has been made with McLaren. This would mean that Daniel Ricciardo's time is indeed up at McLaren and has to leave, although he announced recently on his Instagram that he will be a McLaren driver next year as well. But McLaren has given Ricciardo till September to decide whether he will stay or not. To make things even more complicated and confusing, Alpine just confirmed Piastri to take Alonso's seat and says they are pleased to work with him next year. Soon after this announcement, Piastri responded that he has not signed a contract and that he will not drive for Alpine next year. Alpine, on the other hand, says that Piastri does have a contract with Alpine and that they are already looking at legal matters to keep him to his contract. However, the team boss of Alpine also just said that he would be open to see a return of Ricciardo at Alpine. So who is right? Will Piastri replace Ricciardo, or does Ricciardo have such a strong contract that he can force McLaren to let him drive next year? What is Piastri's contract with Alpine, and how legally binding is that contract? What does ex-Formula One driver Mark Webber have to do with all this drama, and for what team will Piastri drive for? Let's find out. Oscar Piastri is one of the biggest talents of Formula One. Since 2019, he has won the Formula Renault Euro Cup, the F3 Championship, and the Formula 2 Championship. His consecutive titles in 3 different racing classes make him one of the most attractive drivers to sign up for an F1 team. Piastri was a bit unlucky this year as he couldn't find an F1 seat due to a lack of drivers' market movement. Formula 2 regulations state that when you win the championship, you have to leave the racing class, leaving Piastri in this case empty-handed for this season. However, Piastri has been part of the Alpine Junior Academy since 2020 and has been helped by Alpine both financially as well as mentally to find racing seats and become a better overall driver. Although Piastri doesn't have an F1 racing seat, he is the test and reserve driver for Alpine. Earlier this season, Otmar Szafnauer, team boss of Alpine, said that whatever happens, Piastri will drive Formula One next year. Many expected a deal with Williams, as talks had been that Williams would switch to Renault engines, as Mercedes already announced to supply one team less with their engines. Piastri would sign a 2-year contract with the potential to move to Alpine after those 2 years, but not even a couple weeks later and things turned 180 degrees. So what happened? The announcement of Vettel's retirement opened up a spot at Aston Martin, which Alonso was eager to take after he had a couple conversations with Lawrence Stroll. This unexpected move took the F1 world by surprise and made what seemed to be a stable driver's market shake. Alpine was confident to extend Alonso's ending contract, especially after they were about to start the negotiations, and Alonso himself said that if things go well, they only need 10 minutes to get everything signed. But with Alonso's seat coming free, Alpine doesn't have to make a deal with Williams anymore to get Piastri into Formula One. But before Alpine got the chance to announce Piastri, rumors spread that Piastri signed a deal with McLaren to replace Daniel Ricciardo for next year. Ricciardo has been under some pressure for a while now as his results are meager. During the last race at Hungary, Ricciardo showed once again that he is far off the pace of his teammate Norris. Although both drivers ended in Q3 with Norris starting from 4th position and Ricciardo from 9th, it was only Norris that brought home some points by finishing 7th. Ricciardo fell all the way back to the 15th position and lost out on valuable points for his team. Zak Brown, CEO of McLaren, already said multiple times in the past that Ricciardo has to perform better if he wants to keep his seat. The frequent criticism on Ricciardo's pace let rumors spread that he is going to be replaced next year. Interestingly, one of the drivers people talked about to replace him was Sebastian Vettel, which we now know will retire. As a way to end all rumors, Ricciardo posted an Instagram post recently where he stated that he has a contract till the end of 2023 and that he will be a driver for McLaren next year. Apparently, his contract is watertight and there is no escape clause for McLaren to get rid of him, or so we were led to believe. Mark Webber, who is Piastri's manager, took good use of the situation at McLaren, and multiple sources state that a deal has been made between Piastri and McLaren. But why did they make a deal with McLaren if a spot opened up at Alpine? The deal was made before Alonso announced his move to Aston Martin. For a long time, it seemed that Williams was going to be Piastri's only option, as both Alpine drivers were bound to continue driving for the team. Williams hasn't been the top team it once was and has been bound to fight for the last places for multiple years now. It seems that Webber managed to secure a better seat for Piastri, but what about the watertight contract of Ricciardo? If there is one thing we have learned in Formula One, it is that contracts mean little when it comes to getting rid of a driver. Alan Jones, single world champion Formula One, said multiple weeks ago that a contract in Formula One doesn't mean a whole lot, and that teams are very creative in finding a solution for a big problem. Allegedly, Zak Brown already had talks with Ricciardo to offer him an Indy seat at the McLaren-owned team in the USA. However, Ricciardo has been told by McLaren that he has till September to make a decision whether he will stay or not. Ricciardo hasn't responded to the rumors yet, but Ricciardo isn't the only one Piastri has to deal with. Alpine already announced Piastri as their second driver for next year a day after Alonso announced his switch to Aston Martin. Initially, Alpine's big announcement stopped the rumors that Piastri is taking Ricciardo's seat, but something extraordinary happened not much later. Piastri himself tweeted to state that he has not signed a contract with Alpine and said that he won't be driving for Alpine next year. Since Alpine has a much faster car than Williams, it is unlikely that Piastri would tweet this bold statement because he wants to keep his seat at Williams. Much more reasonable and realistic is that the rumors are true and that Piastri signed a contract with McLaren. So how did Alpine respond to Piastri's denial? Zafnauer, team boss of Alpine, said that legally Piastri is bound to Alpine and that he is confident that his team is juridically correct. Alpine is said to have a clause in the contract with Piastri that they can activate and oblige the young driver to drive for the French team. However, insiders say that according to the contract, Alpine needed to activate this clause before August 1st. Since Alonso announced his move on August 1st, Alpine has been one day too late. This would make total sense why Piastri was so clear in his denial of driving for Alpine next year. But since the deadline was missed by just a couple hours, Alpine might think they have a chance to legally win this dispute. While Alpine and Piastri are likely to battle it out during the summer break, Daniel Ricciardo has a battle to fight himself. At this point, it is impossible to deny McLaren's wish to get rid of Ricciardo. McLaren and Alpine are entwined in a fierce battle for the fourth place at the Constructors' Championship, and Ricciardo is of little help. He currently has a 57-point deficit on his teammate, and McLaren is currently 4 points behind Alpine due to the lack of performance of Ricciardo. The difference between securing a fourth or fifth place at the end of the season for a team is many millions, and with a yearly salary of $15 million, McLaren has the right to expect more from Ricciardo. However, the contractual issues of Piastri also affect where Ricciardo will end up next year. If Piastri is indeed obliged to drive for Alpine, then there is still a chance for Ricciardo to drive for McLaren next year, although you would have to wonder if the relationship between driver and team can ever be fixed. But if Piastri has the right to drive for another team, then how far will Ricciardo go to keep McLaren to their contract? It seems that bridges have been burned between Alpine and Piastri, and between McLaren and Ricciardo. With silly season officially started, we can also conclude that Ricciardo's time at McLaren is coming to an end. However, Zafnauer already said that he is interested in a potential return of Ricciardo at Alpine. With the situation boiling up, it might be in everyone's best interest to make a driver's swap. Where do you think Piastri ends up? Do you think Ricciardo will keep McLaren to their contract, or will he make the move to Alpine? Let us know in the comment section below.